The London Divide. The autumn of 2025 was colder than usual in London, the kind of chill that seeped into bones and lingered in the air like an unspoken grudge. The city, draped in a grey mist, buzzed with a tension that had been building for months. It began with a single speech, delivered across the Atlantic, that set the world ablaze. Former President Donald Trump, now a polarizing figurehead in American politics, had taken the stage at a rally in Ohio. His words, sharp and unfiltered, cut through the diplomatic niceties that usually governed international discourse. "London's lost its way," he declared, his voice booming through the microphone. "Sadiq Khan's turned it into a mess, crime's up, streets are dirty, and the UK's too weak to stand up for itself. They're letting Europe and everyone else walk all over them." The crowd roared, but in London, the reaction was visceral. The remarks were not just a personal attack on Mayor Sadiq Khan but a broader slight against the United Kingdom, already grappling with its post-Brexit identity. Social media erupted. #TrumpVS.London trended on X, with posts ranging from indignant defenses of the city to memes mocking Trump's own record. In Westminster, Prime Minister Keir Starmer faced a firestorm. The Labour government, only a year into its tenure, was still navigating the delicate balance of rebuilding trust at home while maintaining alliances abroad. Trump's words, though not official policy, were a diplomatic grenade. In City Hall, Sadiq Khan sat at his desk, the Thames glittering darkly beyond his window. His advisors were in a frenzy, urging a measured response. But Khan, a seasoned politician who had weathered countless storms, saw an opportunity. The city he loved, diverse, resilient, global, had been insulted. More than that, the UK's government seemed paralyzed, caught between outrage and the need to avoid alienating a key ally. Khan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. This wasn't just a moment to defend London, it was a chance to redefine it. The rally. 2 days later, Khan stood before a crowd of thousands in Trafalgar Square. The iconic lions loomed behind him, and the air was thick with anticipation. Protesters waved signs reading, "London stands tall," and "No to disrespect." The mayor, dressed in a sharp navy suit, stepped to the podium, his voice steady but charged with passion. "Londoners," he began, "we are a city of history, of strength, of diversity. We have faced wars, recessions, and challenges that would break lesser places. And yet, we are told we are weak. We are told we are failing. I say to those across the ocean, you do not know London." The crowd erupted in cheers. Khan paused, letting the energy build. "This is not just about one man's words," he continued. "This is about our future. For too long, London has carried the weight of this nation, its economy, its culture, its spirit, while being tethered to decisions made far from our streets. It's time we ask ourselves, should London have more say in its own destiny?" The word autonomy hadn't been uttered yet, but the implication hung in the air. Khan's speech was a masterstroke, blending defiance against foreign criticism with a call for local empowerment. By the time he stepped down, the crowd was chanting his name, and the idea of a Greater London Autonomy referendum began to take root. Across the river in Westminster, Keir Starmer watched the speech on a television in his office. His advisors were divided. Some saw Khan's move as a dangerous escalation, a populist stunt that could fracture the nation. Others argued it was a necessary response to a government that seemed out of touch. Starmer, a man known for his cautious pragmatism, felt the weight of the moment. He had campaigned on unity, on healing the divisions of Brexit and austerity. But now, with London pulling one way and Washington another, unity seemed like a distant dream. The diplomatic dance. In Washington, the White House was in damage control mode. President Kamala Harris, navigating her first term, had no love for Trump's rhetoric but couldn't ignore the political reality. The US-UK relationship was a cornerstone of Western alliances, vital for trade, security, and global influence. A public spat with London risked emboldening adversaries like Russia and China, who were already exploiting divisions in the West. Harris called Starmer directly, her tone warm but firm. "Keir, we need to de-escalate this," she said, her voice crackling through the secure line. "Trump's out of line, but he doesn't speak for us. Let's focus on what matters, our shared goals." Starmer agreed, but the call left him uneasy. Harris was right, but the optics were disastrous. The British public, already skeptical of American influence, saw Trump's remarks as emblematic of a broader arrogance. Starmer's government was being painted as too weak to stand up to Washington, and Khan's bold rhetoric only amplified that narrative. Back in London, Khan was moving fast. He convened a special session of the London Assembly, proposing a non-binding resolution to explore greater autonomy. The idea was radical but not unprecedented. Scotland and Wales had long pushed for devolved powers, and London, with its economic might, could make a strong case. The resolution passed narrowly, with opposition from Conservative and some Labour members, but it was enough to keep the momentum going. Khan's team began drafting a referendum plan. It would ask Londoners whether the city should seek greater control over its taxes, policing, and infrastructure, powers currently held by Westminster. The campaign slogan, "London for Londoners," was simple but potent, tapping into a growing sense of frustration with centralized governance. The divide widens. As autumn turned to winter, the autonomy movement gained traction. Polls showed 55% of Londoners supported the referendum, with younger voters and minority communities, Khan's base, leading the charge. Rallies filled the streets, from Camden to Brixton, with speakers decrying everything from Westminster's budget cuts to Trump's insults. The movement wasn't just about policy, it was about identity. Londoners saw themselves as distinct, global, forward-thinking, a city-state within a nation that often seemed stuck in the past. But not everyone was on board. In the suburbs and outer boroughs, skepticism grew. Critics argued that autonomy would deepen inequality, creating a wealthy, self-governing London while the rest of the UK struggled. The Conservative Party, led by Kemi Badenoch, seized on this, accusing Khan of dividing the nation for personal gain. Badenoch, a rising star, framed the debate as a choice between unity and chaos, warning that a fragmented UK would be vulnerable on the world stage. Starmer, caught in the middle, tried to thread the needle. In a speech to Parliament, he acknowledged London's contributions but stressed the importance of national cohesion. "We are one united kingdom," he said, his voice firm. "London's strength is Britain's strength, and we will work together to address its challenges." The words were meant to reassure, but they felt hollow to many. Khan's supporters saw it as capitulation to Washington, his critics saw it as dodging the issue. Behind closed doors, Starmer's advisors were blunt. "Khan's playing a dangerous game," said one. "If this referendum happens, it could spark similar movements in Manchester, Birmingham, everywhere. The country could unravel." Another countered, "But if we shut it down, we alienate London and hand the Tories a weapon. We need to offer something, more devolution, maybe, but on our terms." Starmer nodded, his face etched with worry. He had spent his career building bridges, but now he was standing on a fault line. The international stage. The crisis wasn't confined to the UK. In Brussels, EU leaders watched with keen interest. Brexit had already strained relations, and a fractured UK could shift the balance of power in Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron, ever the opportunist, suggested that an autonomous London might find a special relationship with the EU, a comment that infuriated Westminster but delighted Khan's supporters. In Washington, Trump doubled down. At another rally, he called Khan a disaster and suggested London needed strong leadership, not woke policies. The remarks, amplified on X, fueled the autonomy campaign. Trended globally, with posts ranging from policy arguments to viral videos of Londoners chanting in defiance. Harris, frustrated, dispatched Secretary of State Antony Blinken to London for talks. Blinken met Starmer at Downing Street, where the two issued a joint statement reaffirming the unbreakable US-UK alliance. But the damage was done. The public saw the visit as a desperate attempt to paper over cracks, and Khan's team wasted no time capitalizing on it. "London doesn't need lectures from abroad," read a press release from City Hall. "We need control over our future." The referendum. By spring 2026, the autonomy referendum was a reality. Parliament, under pressure from public opinion and Khan's relentless campaign, had agreed to let London vote. The question was simple: should Greater London have greater autonomy over its governance, including taxation, policing, and infrastructure? The campaign was fierce, with Khan leading the yes side and a coalition of Tories, moderate Labour MPs, and rural advocates backing no. The yes campaign was a masterclass in grassroots organizing. Volunteers canvassed every borough, from Hackney to Harrow, with leaflets and rallies. Celebrities, from actors to musicians, endorsed the cause, framing it as a stand for London's unique identity. The no campaign, meanwhile, struggled to match the energy. Their message, national unity, economic stability, felt stale against Khan's vision of a bold, self-governing city. Starmer, torn between loyalty to his party and the need to lead, took a neutral stance, urging Londoners to vote with their heads and hearts. It was a cop-out, and he knew it. The Labour Party was fracturing, with urban MPs backing Khan and others warning of a constitutional crisis. On referendum day, London was electric. Polling stations were packed, and the city held its breath. When the results came in, they were close: 52% for yes, 48% for no. Khan had won, but the margin was narrow, and the country was more divided than ever. The referendum wasn't binding, but it sent shockwaves through Westminster. Khan demanded immediate talks on devolving powers, while Starmer scrambled to respond. The Tories, sensing weakness, called for a general election, accusing Labour of losing control. Across the UK, regional leaders began eyeing their own devolution campaigns, from Manchester to Edinburgh. In Washington, Harris congratulated London on its democratic process, but privately urged Starmer to hold the line. The US needed a strong, unified UK, not a patchwork of semi-independent regions. But Starmer's options were dwindling. If he granted London's demands, he risked alienating the rest of the country. If he refused, he risked losing the capital. Khan, standing on the steps of City Hall, addressed a jubilant crowd. "This is not the end," he said, his voice echoing across the Thames. "This is the beginning of a new London, one that speaks for itself, stands for itself, and builds its own future." As the crowd cheered, Starmer watched from Downing Street, his phone buzzing with messages from allies and adversaries alike. The UK was at a crossroads, and he was running out of time to choose a path. The reckoning. Months later, negotiations began. Khan's team pushed for a model inspired by Scotland's devolved parliament, with control over a portion of London's tax revenue and policing. Starmer, wary of setting a precedent, offered a compromise: increased funding and local input, but no formal autonomy. The talks were tense, with both sides aware that the eyes of the world, and the UK, were on them. Across the Atlantic, Trump's influence waned as American voters grew tired of his divisive rhetoric. But the damage he had sparked lingered, a reminder of how words could ignite a movement. In London, the autonomy debate had changed the city forever. It was no longer just the capital of the UK, it was a symbol of defiance, a city that dared to dream of more. As the negotiations dragged on, Khan and Starmer met privately. The two men, both Labour stalwarts, shared a history but stood on opposite sides of a chasm. "This isn't about you or me," Khan said, his voice low but firm. "It's about Londoners. They've spoken, Keir. You can't ignore them." Starmer sighed, rubbing his temples. And I'm trying to hold this country together, Sadiq. If London breaks away, what's next? We're stronger together. Khan leaned forward. Stronger, yes. But not at the cost of our voice. The meeting ended without resolution, but the story was far from over. London's future, and the UK's, hung in the balance, shaped by a single spark that had grown into a fire.